Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Sean McGuinness podcast. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for all the support and reviews and messages. When you like an episode, always feel free to DM me. Tell me which one you liked or didn't like. But yes, we're getting up there in the charts, which not only feeds a little bit my ego, but more importantly, actually, it's good to see the information's getting out there. Not that my podcast is the only good one around, but it actually really is. From my unbiased opinion. Today, what I want to talk about, it's a massive topic, alright, and this is especially for people in that beginner to intermediate stage. When I say beginner to intermediate, it's like you're trying to ingrain certain habits into your lifestyle. Sometimes it may feel like you're spinning your wheels, or you're going around in circles, or you're doing well and then you slip up and you're back where you started. It's constant like snakes and ladders with that. And when you understand this topic, trust me, it's a game changer. But as always, a lot of this stuff isn't logical. We are emotional beings. I think I seen this quote yesterday. It said, "Don't judge people, or when you're judging people, remember we're not logical, we're emotional." And it definitely ties into obviously what we're talking about with this, with habit change, behavior change. And this topic from a coaching point of view, it can get frustrating. Not that I'm like angry at the client or anything, but it's a part of the process. And when you listen to this and understand it, it is going to bypass a lot of wasted time, energy, and frustration. So here, I'm going to play out a little timeline what normally happens, what I see. Someone starts up a plan. They're going well. Let's say, for example, when I'm coaching someone, I always, like, it's never a case I'll say, okay, you have to track your calories though, and with this calorie formula. I'll always ask them, look, here's the options of some kind of calorie control. Which one are you most comfortable doing with, or committing to? And let's say, for example, one of the options is calorie counting, because we know it's going to be a bit more precise, especially at the start. And that person says, yes, no problem. Okay, I'm confident doing that. And they start to track their calories. They're getting the training sessions in. They're bumping activity up, coinciding. They're starting to sleep better. And they're starting to drop body fat if that's the goal. Obviously, it's nice, positive, reinforced. Everything's going well. And the reason being that I need to add in, which is important, part of this whole thing, the reason they're going well is they have good structure at the start, not generally. Okay, they have good structure. So because they're so conscious about they're more conscious about what they're eating, they may be preparing the meals, they may be tracking where, if they're eating out, cafes, so like you can still eat out, as I've always said before, but like you're more diligent and you're more prepared. So you may be, okay, I know I'm going to go here for lunch ahead of time. I know I'm going to order this. This contains X amount of calories. That fits into my day. When I have dinner tonight, I know what I'm having. That fits into my day. So there's generally, when someone's at the start or going through a good phase, the commonality is there's good structure. It's the same with anything. It's good structure. So like I said, they're diligent about what they're eating. There's pre-planning, there's preparation. They're probably eating at similar times every day. They're training similar times per week. Whatever it is, they're doing the steps perfect. Now, here's what happened. You're going well, and then because you're losing body fat, and again, crazy human phenomenon, you start to get a little bit cocky. So you start to go off plan a little bit, or you go away from your routine or your habits that have gotten to this point. Ironically, logic may say, Sean, keep doing what you're doing. You're going great. Don't stray away. These are the habits that lead to success. And sometimes it can be, well, what I found with people, they get cocky, but also like in terms of fat loss, when you think, okay, it comes down to calories, so I can afford to not prepare my meals for this week because I'm going so well, and I'll just wing it. So I'll go and I won't have to prepare my food, or I won't have to be diligent and strategize with what I'm going to have for lunch and dinner. I'm just going to do it ad hoc because I'm going so well. The problem being, people in the beginner intermediate stage, you haven't started with habits that are, I'm going to say healthy, but like if I think of an advanced person, let's think of myself for a time being, not to blow my own trumpet, but in regards to food, when I go out to eat, I'm so ingrained that the first thing I look for is some protein. Then I'm going to look for some veggies. Then I'm going to look for some carbohydrates. And because advanced people may have gone through years of like tracking their calories, everything's just so much more, I'm going to use the word intuitive, habitual. That's our like backup. So if you think of like the older part of your brain, one of the parts like nucleus accumbens, all these parts of the brain where your habits are stored, the ones that are more prominent in regards to nutrition and training for an advanced person, can afford them the luxury to be a bit more flexible, because that's what they have done for years and years and years. Whereas a beginner and intermediate, kind of their fallback habits are ones that are not congruent with fat loss. Okay, I think we can all agree to that. So at the start, you haven't done the habit long enough for it to become automatic to then take your eye off the ball. It still needs to be very, very, very conscious. And again, one habit can take on average 66 days. So you can imagine trying to change all these things, like even trying to change your breakfast. If you go to a certain cafe, that's going to be one habit on its own. Trying to change your order at lunch from what you normally get, it's going to be completely different. Trying to change your dinner, trying to add training in. You can see all these small habits they're part of a big picture, but individually it's going to take months, sometimes years, to ingrain them to the point that you can do them on autopilot. So whether it's beginners, intermediate, see the more advanced people talking about this, or and again, I understand, like you get a bit cocky and you go away from that. You can go, oh, I can be a bit flexible, but I'm here to tell you can't. I'm here to tell you can't, because it's always a recipe for disaster. So again, what normally happens is you might be tracking your calories ad hoc and you start to forget to track. I'm going to think of numerous things that have happened with clients. You forget to track. You are tracking, but you're not tracking everything because you may not be preparing your meals, or you may be forgetting. Remember, a lot of our habits are automatic. 40-50% of our day is habitual. So if you're you may still be in a stage where you're doing old habits and you're forgetting to track, and then you may have got to the end of the day and go, oh shit, I've forgot to track everything I've went over. I'll stuff it, and so on and so on and so on. And this and you can, after going well, it's so easy just to fall back into your old habits for a few weeks, especially if you don't have a coach that's going to review everything on a weekly basis. And like if I have a client where it's face to face online, I can afford to catch them and go, look, you're going way off track. Can't see your food being tracked. I can't see any of this stuff. Like, let's get in a phone call, whatever it is, and iron it out. If it's online or face to face, I can give them a little bit of tough love is what they need, or just show them the facts, so we can nip it in the bud pretty quick. But yes, if you've gone away from that completely, and then normally what coincides, you start to forget to weigh, or maybe you don't want to weigh yourself because you've gone off track, and then you spiral back into your old habits. And again, they're going to come back very quick because they're so ingrained at the start. Does this sound familiar with you? So you go completely away from your routines, your strategies, your preparation. And then what can happen, as I just think of this, is then you feel so guilty and shameful. and then it becomes so overwhelming to start again, because you realize how off track you actually are, whether you've gained the weight back, whether you've just, because remember, in habit change, you need to keep doing the habit over and over and over again to become habitual, and on the process it becomes like slightly easier as you go, slightly more automatic. So you may have got to a stage where it's nearly ingrained or nearly pretty ingrained to your lifestyle, but then the old habits creep back in, and then that becomes to the forefront, and that takes over in whatever scenario that is. Because with behavior change, if you think of it like a line, okay, we have all these habits stored in our brain, maybe depending on the like emotion we feel. Whether we feel stressed, we do X habit when we're stressed. So maybe we used to stress eat, and now we might replace that behavior that when we're stressed we go and exercise. But only takes and obviously the longer the old habit's been ingrained, it only takes once or twice to do the old habit again for it to come back to the front of the line. So say for example, the stress eating has slowly gone to the back of the line because we put other habits, and especially one at the forefront. If it's exercise, that's the one we go to all the time, but it just takes one little thing to bring that back to the top of the line. Now that's your prioritized habit, or whatever you want to call it, and that becomes back stronger than ever. You can see this with like food cravings, or obviously drugs is an extreme example on that end of it, of the reward system, but it's the same way. It just takes one little drink or whatever it is, alcoholic, for those things to come right back to the forefront. And you kind of, it's annoying to say you waste your time, but that's what's happened. But you waste your time more so if you don't learn from it. Like if you keep doing this over and over and again, and we're going to chat about how to avoid this, but yeah, that is what I find happens. So what I'm trying to get across is when you're a beginner and intermediate, routine and structure is absolutely vital. I think we hear about, and I talk about, flexible dieting, where it's as much of like a kind of a mindset that Lyle McDonald talks about as an approach where we know we can fit foods in there. We have our calorie intake, we can fit foods in there. But I think then people take that a bit too literal, especially if they're not advanced. And again, they think they can just walk around with their MyFitnessPal and track as they go, and they're going to come in on their calories. It's not going to happen. There's too much high calorie food in today's world, and we need to be very organized. It's a bit harder in today's world to actually get the foods that keep us full to stop us going over the calorie intake. So it takes a lot of strategy and organization to get enough protein, to get enough veg, to get enough good carbohydrates, especially because if we think of where our brain is wired, it's wired to always preference higher calorie food over more healthier food. So even if you have the intention of eating, okay, I'm going to get that salad for lunch, but suddenly you've started to revert back to, I don't know, chips and a burger, which is probably 2-3 times the calories, then you add your stress, you're tired, you're hungry, all these things on top, and that's going to feed into you making a bad decision even more. So where the environment's making it harder for us, the way our brain's wired is making it hard for us, and then we have all these other contexts of stress and associations and maybe peer pressure from work, and everything else is just dumbing down on you to make the worst decision possible. As we can probably all attest, it's very hard. So it takes that level of strategy and planning to bypass this. Now we talk about rigid dieting and the fact of how bad it is. And rigid dieting, if you want to think of it, it's just when you say, okay, I'm not going to have any quote unquote processed foods or bad foods. That's rigid dieting. However, the way I've come to think of it is when we're beginner and intermediate, we need to be a little bit more rigid with our structure and routine to avoid all these things that can come up, to avoid the bad habits coming back, to avoid making a bad decision. So yes, so you cannot be flexible with your, like really flexible ad hoc with your approach when you're a beginner intermediate, in my opinion. you need to have a rigid structure. You need to be eating at certain times a day, and that's where it comes back to, like, I've talked about how many meals that you can eat before. Okay, you can eat 2, 3, 4 meals. It comes down to your preference, but whatever you choose, I really advise to just stick with that and eat at the same times every day, and try to eat. And I've talked about before, eating similar foods, even especially during the week when you can. So for breakfast, you may only give yourself 2 or 3 options, and you just rotate around those options. Any less may become a bit mentally restricting. Any more, there's a Goldilocks effect with too strict or too flexible. If you go too flexible, it's just as bad as being too strict, because there's too many choices, too many variety, and you're going to make a bad decision when you get decision fatigue and all these other aspects in there. So yeah, I think that's what's not talked about as much. We still need a nice level of restriction, but also autonomy and flexibility, and it's getting that Goldilocks effect. So in my opinion, from working with people, especially if you're falling into this, I think just do that. So if you're eating out, okay, I'm going to go to the cafe, and you might, what you can do even more, how some clients do that lack the structure of falling into this trap, or make them write their own meal plan out. So we may have gone along, we may have tracked our calories for a week or two, or a few weeks. We may have fallen into this trap, but we know, okay, when I was going well, I was eating this for breakfast. How was your hunger and fullness? Brilliant. I was full to lunch. Okay, great. Let's use that as one of our options. We know that fits our calorie intake for that day. And so I would literally get the client to write out Monday. Let's say, for example, they make an egg white omelette. I'm just saying egg white omelette because you can get 6 egg whites, like 100 calories, and some veggies, and it fills people up. Now, obviously, that's going to depend on, we want to make sure we get enough protein, we want to make sure we get some veg in there, and we want to make sure that keeps that person full. Whether for someone else that may be like some oats with some protein powder, or some full eggs with the yolk if they have the calories, because obviously the yolk contains the fat, which contains the majority of the calorie content for that egg. And yeah, they may have 2 or 3 different things, whether they make a home, whether they go to the cafe they know does this, and I'll get them to write it in, those 2 or 3 options. Or even if they want to go a bit further, they can write Monday, the egg white omelette, Tuesday, I don't know, whatever it is, protein oats. So they're cycling around, they're not getting bored of it. And maybe in the future, if they do, we can change it up and have another little option in there instead of something else. I'll do the same for lunch. Whether you're preparing your meals, where you're doing My Muscle Chef, whether you're going to the cafe again to buy it, you're going to go to the same place. You might have 2 or 3 options from that cafe, or from 3 other places around. Rotate around those options. Make sure they're getting enough protein, make sure they're getting enough veggies, make sure keeping us full, satisfied, etc., etc. Same for dinner. Dinner is sometimes a bit harder, or sometimes easier for people, because where they might be making for the family. But we want to use the same mindset. Okay, we want to make sure we have a protein, a veg, maybe some good carbohydrates, and we're rotating around 2 or 3 things. And you'll probably find when you're going well, you're probably doing this unconsciously. So with the mealtime, yeah, like I said, if you commit to it, you say, okay, I work best on 3 meals. You might have experimented with 2 meals, not feel too hungry, I binge out. Okay, I'm going to go to 3 meals per day. Write down the times you're going to eat. I'm going to eat at 9, I'm going to eat at 1, I'm going to eat at 6, whatever it is. For some people, they may have to set alarms. So like what I'm saying is, when new habits, you need a trigger to do a habit. And a lot of people fall into the trap with behavior changes. They don't have any conscious triggers to do the habit. So you go, okay, I'm going to do this today at X time. And like we said, we go on autopilot for the majority part of our day, majority half our day, because your brain's trying to conserve energy and it just wants to do everything unconsciously. So if you don't have a trigger, how are you supposed to do that habit? You're just going to go, oh shit, I'm supposed to go and do this, that. I'm supposed to go and train, I'm supposed to go for a run, or do my steps, or drink water. Use your phone, put conscious things in there. Or you could use like habit stacking, habit bundling, where after a habit, after an already ingrained habit, you do X. So I don't know, after like your mid-morning your morning meeting, you have your breakfast. After your morning coffee, you have your breakfast. After your training at lunch, you have your lunch. Whatever it is, use one of those things, because when we do something after a habit, that's the trigger to go and do the habit. So we need triggers to trigger us to do the habit. We're not going to remember everything. Okay, so understand kind of how our brain works, where our flaws are, and then use this strategy. So that's what I make people do. Especially I'll make them write their own meal plans, satisfying those things, satisfying those calories, rather than trying to do it ad hoc. So many people may be going well when it comes to like social events, and then, as I said, get a bit cocky, go off tracks, forget to track drinks, food comes in here, the next day their steps go down. So plan and strategize with your social events. Maybe give yourself how many calories you're going to have at that event and work backwards. You may use a bit of fasting throughout that day, or you may adjust your calories down in the following days. If you're going to adjust your calories down the following days, what are you going to eat? So you need to prepare and strategize for that. You need to make sure that food's in your house. Coming back to that point, we obviously want the habit, but we then need to see, okay, am I making that habit available? So if I say I'm going to prepare my meals, well, when am I going to do my food prep? And that needs to go in the diary. Am I going to order it online? Am I going to go to the shop? Do I go to the shop sometimes? Do I get too hungry and then put other stuff in the basket? Ideally, I would get people, especially if they struggle with this, I would get people to write their meal plan first, and then that is going to be your shopping list. Okay, make the good habits easy to do. Same as I said, if you're going to adjust your calories down after social events, you want to make sure the food's there, because as I said, when you drink, it increases one of the hormones in our brain, ghrelin, which is involved in fat intake, so it makes you crave more fatty foods. So it's very hard. Obviously increases the likelihood you're going to eat more calories, but to get away with that, if your calorie intake's low, you need to make sure that you have that food in your house for the next day when you definitely won't feel like it. So I suppose the common theme for this is kind of just looking ahead. It's so easy to be like, oh, I'll do it on Monday, I'll do it on Tuesday, I'll do it as I go. But if you really think about it, like we have to plan this stuff, because we're just lazy beings, we're irrational, we're emotional, and we have to have our environment as easy as possible to get these results I've talked about before. With social events, I'm just looking at my notes here, as you might track your calories ahead of time in the app. You might prepare those meals for the following days. For busier people, if you have families as well as everything going on, this needs to be even more significant for you. And yeah, it's just understanding that just because you're going well does not mean everything's automatic. Okay, you're not there yet, and you do not have the mindset, unfortunately, and habits to be able to adjust and be flexible. This is a short one today. I just wanted to get that across. Little short episode. I hope that helped. Now what you want to do is just have an audit of your own plan. Think of the times you're going well. Think of the times you slipped up. Hopefully it doesn't seem as overwhelming. As I always say, just think of one habit at a time you're changing, and then create the momentum that way. If it's too overwhelming in your brain, just come back and just pick one thing within that. So okay, I'm going to write my meal plan. Or if you're trying to ingrain your training, I'm going to do my training at X time a day. And then have some kind of be able to review that. So did I hit my target? Ideally, I'm always a big proponent of accountability within that. If you can get a coach to keep you accountable, to prioritize those habits and nip it in the bud when stuff goes off track. And as I said, it's not easy because everything's set up against us, but it has to be done. We have to make these healthy habits as convenient as possible. If we walk around with a big Labrador hungry brain in today's environment, it's going to end up in disaster. So there's your job. Feel free to message me with your little your made meal plans. Message me with how you're going to strategize your plan. And we've just talked nutrition, but take the basic concept in terms of your training, in terms of your steps. Obviously, in terms of training, it could be like booking with a trainer, booking for a class. How can you get someone to hold you accountable to go and ingrain the habit? Where is the trigger? Where are you going to set your alarm to tell yourself to go training? Or if you're trying to focus on sleep, tell yourself to go to bed at night. If it comes to your steps, obviously the Fitbits are brilliant. Apple Watches, because they give you those rings, they give you an incentive. They're constantly making those things conscious until we can get to the point where it's unconscious. So there you go. Don't get cocky. Strategize, plan, and then come back even more for me to carry those habits out. What do I need to do? When do I need to do it? Where's the trigger for me to do those habits? And create the domino effect that way. When you're getting cocky, remember, come back and say, no, I can't fall back into this trap. If I'm always preparing my meals on Sunday, I need to do that. I need to do that all the time. That needs to be my conscious habit. And hopefully this has opened up your eyes to think about your own plan. We have good intentions, but we don't necessarily think about how we're going to do it. So do you have the resources of, if you're trying to ingrain a habit of eating better, when are you buying the healthy food? Do you have the resources? When do those habits happen? Because it's kind of a domino effect. For example, one of my clients I'm thinking of now at the moment, I know, and she has agreed that when she prepares her food, and she likes doing that, and she has the time on Sundays, the rest of her week's easy. So imagine some people go, I just need more self-control, more discipline to eat better during the week. No, we know if my client food preps, the rest of the week goes very, very smooth. So what do? We set the reminder that on Sunday she does her food shop, and then she food preps her meals. And in terms of how I'm going to ingrain that, I'm keep her accountable to that habit that creates a domino effect to her eat better. I'm going to, in the software I use, it sends her a reminder on Sunday, and then she ticks off the habit that she's done her food prep, and then that's our main priority habit that we look at the start. What I also did was got her to send me a picture of her food prep in the containers. Perfect. As I said, there may be a stage with some people where it will be so easy to get cocky and then go, do you know what? I don't need the food prep. I'm going well. I know what to eat. I'm going to carry out during the week. And yes, that's a recipe for disaster. It actually makes me think of a client where I used to train 4 girls together in a group, semi-private group, still our friends. But one of the girls who a few years later finally got great results. Took us a while. These things take time, trust me. When she was going well, she might lose, say, 5 kilos. And other girls come in, oh, Johnny, you look great, you look brilliant. And to get to that point, obviously, nice and rigid structure, good routines, good habits, preparation, all the stuff we talked about. But when she'd hear that, she goes, yeah, I am. Instead of that positive reinforcement, the habits, she'd get cocky and then go away from the habits and then put the weight on, and a vicious cycle. So after a while, I just said, look, stop telling her she's looking good when she is, because she goes off track. We need to keep her on it. She was actually more like motivated by kind of what's going to happen if you don't reach her goal, and would go off track, weird enough, when people say she was looking good. So yes, I know a lot of people can attest to this and relate to this, so that's why I said to do this episode. You probably have a good understanding of all the other topics I talk about, but just when you bring it together, you may have hit this phenomenon, as I said, when you start to get a little bit cocky and go away from your habits, and kind of use the example of Conor McGregor. Same thing, when he was hungry and he was going well and he needed to make that money, he was obviously training hard, but once he got there, he then thought he could still hang at the top, and I'm the biggest Conor McGregor fan ever, unfortunately. But then, obviously, then he went against Khabib, and Khabib was training like a monk 20 for like 12 hours a day, whereas McGregor thought he'd done well. Everything was more inflated, thought he'd get away with not training as hard, and then obviously went in against Khabib and got smashed up. And then the same with Poirier, and when he's come back, he's too cocky and his habits are not the same as when he was coming up. That got him there. He has all these other businesses, fair play to him, but that's just the easy example of he's probably got cocky and said, well, I've become a double weight world champion, I can get in there easy enough, and then found out no, successful people have successful habits that dictate that. So there you go. Hopefully that episode helped. Have a little order, have a little think of your own plan. Try to find some strategies and ways to basically keep yourself in the game when you don't feel like doing it. That's the whole big thing. There's going to be the majority of the time you're going to not feel like carrying it out, especially after you get through that honeymoon phase of starting a plan. How can you keep yourself accountable and then mark out a path that makes it as easy as possible for you to reach your goal? That's how we do that. If you have any questions, please let me know. I really hope that helped. And yeah, obviously please rate and review, send it, because I know a lot of people struggle with this phenomenon. I think it's called a halo effect. I don't know, something I've heard talk about called a halo effect. So kind of when you're out to dinner at a small and minute level, when you're out to dinner and you order salad and you're trying to be good, and then you reward yourself with dessert because you've ordered salad. It doesn't make any fucking sense. Same way when people exercise, then they reward themselves with food, which just cancels out the thing. So maybe a halo effect to a bigger scale, but humans are strange. We have evolved to survive in crazy conditions, and again, as I said, it's not really congruent with today's lifestyle, but we need to understand how our brain's wired and all this crazy phenomenon, biases and cognitive biases, and then plan our strategy from that. So there you go. Hopefully that helps. Hope you have a great morning, day, or evening wherever you are in the world. Head on over to livingonperformance.com to keep up to date with everything we're offering. We're going to start some release the information or coaching programs in the new year, as well as numerous products, training programs, nutrition ebooks, etc. So go on that. Obviously go over to my Instagram. YouTube, we're putting up more information. We're just trying to take over everywhere, so if you could help me do that, I would be forever grateful. Alright, thank you for listening and watching, and I will see you all in the next episode.